Hi, everyone, and welcome to Barefoot with Spirit podcast show. I'm your host, Leanne, the Barefoot Medium, and a special welcome to members of the Mediums Lounge community. For those of you who don't know me, I'm really excited to connect with you. I'm an international medium, twin flame, and also a transformational coach who is really passionate about connecting people with their loved ones who've passed over, as well as helping people to manifest and create healthy, loving relationships in their life, as well as manifest whatever it is your soul needs, wants, and desires. Before we get started, I just want to do a bit of an acknowledgement of the traditional custodians of the land on which I stand and on which my guest stands, and to pay respects to elders past, present, and emerging. I extend that respect to all Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples and First Nations people, wherever you are in the world and wherever you're tuning in from. Kick off your shoes, take some really beautiful, big, deep breaths into your heart space, and step into this beautiful sacred container and sacred space for an intimate, connected conversation with my guest, Jo Goddard, on pleasure and intimacy. Hi, Jo.
Hello, thanks for having me.
So excited for you to join us. Now, Jo is a Reiki master, teacher, massage therapist, and retreat facilitator, and is also known as the Joy Huntress, which I really love, and is one of Australia's leading pleasure and intimacy mentors for women and couples. She's the founder of I'm Her, which was birthed through her own journey of self-discovery and self-acceptance, culminating in her discovery of the secret source, which I love, to reclaiming your true essence and her true essence amongst the chaos of roles and responsibilities. So I've reached out to you, Jo, because I really love the kind of sassy and creative way that you bring forward your work.
That's a very good way of describing that, yes.
Yeah. So can you share with everybody how you stepped into your journey and how you came to be doing the work that you're doing?
Yeah, gosh, that question, every time it lands in me, it's like, okay, which part of the unfolding is the place I put the pinpoint and say it started there? But kind of what's moving through me today is, I guess the biggest catalyst of the journey I've been on was about 8 years ago when my third child was born, and I I I was barely a glimmer of who I am now. And remember standing in the middle of my children's bedroom and just, you know, somebody's needing a hug, someone's needing a glass of water, somebody is wanting my attention, and the noise and the chaos around me. And it just became really overwhelming. And I stood there and I screamed. I probably even swore, and was just like trying to place me above the chaos around me. And what I have come to recognize is what that moment was it was a crumbling, but it was a declaration. It was a declaration of I deserve to be seen, heard, witnessed. And while it didn't automatically change my life, it ripple affected. And I hit rock bottom. But for me, when I hit that place, it became permission to just go, what have I got to lose? And curiosity began to become this thread in my life, which just pulled me along, right? And I just followed it. I didn't question it. I just did it. And that's what led me into energy work and following that path to being the Reiki master teacher. And in that, there was still curiosity. There was, okay, I've built a greater understanding of who I am beyond the physical, but I'd kind of leapt out of the physical to get there. And I had this great need to come back into the body. And so I birthed myself as a body worker and really love the way that Kahuna bodywork is the physical and the spiritual kind of coming together in this beautiful temple, this temple sacred massage experience. But still, I was in these places and I was in these conversations and encouraging people to know themselves in mind and body. And I realized that there's all this work happening around energetic self, around spiritual self, around physical, somatic self. We talk about, health is our wealth and all this stuff, but nobody was having deep, explorative conversations around intimacy, pleasure, sensuality, sexuality. And it hit me, right? We are born from an expression of sexuality, of sensuality. That is the initial energy, the initial spark that brings us into creation, into being. But we're supposed to put that in this corner and say that's taboo, or you only do that behind closed doors, or you don't talk about it, or maybe, after a couple of wines, it's a girls' night conversation. But it's not in the everyday. And it's not acknowledging that our sensuality and our sexuality is our physical, is our spiritual as well. And so I just wanted to start to become this permission piece to have these conversations. And being that I have so many beautiful women coming into my clinic regularly, to feel back in their bodies, to fall back in love with themselves, that's kind of how it just kept evolving, because we talk about things like, where are you in your menstrual cycle? How's your relationship at home? All this started to piece together, and it really started to paint this holistic picture. And then my own journey as well. I think sometimes when we find this new key of, how we're here to serve, we often have to take ourselves through that journey first. So before I really felt embodied to claim those conversations of having, claim it almost in a leadership space, I went on this journey myself, and I stripped away more of my own conditioning and understanding of who I was as a feminine being, as a sensual being. I gave myself even more permission to choose curiosity, not just be the consequence of curiosity, but to actively choose it, and look at the ways in which I'd experienced, my body boundaries being crossed, and what did I need to do and be within myself to ensure that I was really certain on what I was, who had the permission to be there, what I needed to dissolve because I created relationships and circumstances based on an unempowered version of me. And I went on to the next phase of the crumbling. I dissolved my then marriage. I pivoted my business. I had to let some friendships go, because as you want to have some really bold, sassy conversations, as you say, some people aren't ready for that. And it's that permission to let that go, and keep moving forward. And I'll never forget, I went, just again, curiosity was like, what's this yoni massage thing that I keep hearing about? And I went to an information session. And in that information session, the facilitator, beautiful Amy Tao from Temple of She was giving away a 12-week Enter the Temple Sacred Feminine Embodiment program. And I won it. I was like, oh, okay. I didn't even know it was being offered. Then I won it. And that took me on this amazing journey. And from that, I stepped into becoming the yoni massage facilitator, and I stepped into running workshops around sensuality and pleasure, and stepped into being that space holder and that voice for the taboo, the shadowy topics, all my conversations around sex and sexuality now are done sober. There's no need for a girls' night with a glass of wine. It's part of my everyday, and it's also taken my my body work practice in terms of how I facilitate for clients into more deeper understanding. And my most recent curious little edge is looking at the lymphatic system and the energetic, the energy meridians, and how they overlap within each other, and how something like lymphatic health could be a key to unlocking your sensual wealth. Because when we're stuck and stagnant in our flow, how can we access our desires? How can we understand what pleasure feels like? So while this catalyst for pleasure is driving everything for me, it's also unraveling more ways in which I can meet people where they're at. Not everyone's ready for the yoni massage, but lymphatic drainage massage, right? And it's my job to have the understanding of how everything interconnects and weaves together, and be ready for those conversations when they are. Yeah.
Awesome. There's so much, and I'm going to use the word because it's popping to mind, so much juicy information in there that I want to tap into, and I want to, unpack a little bit with you. You started off by talking about, that overwhelm that you experienced and how that came out of your physical body in terms of that, that yelling or that screaming. What I saw in that vision is, anger is often an emotion that has other things underneath it and is a doorway to passion. And often anger in particular is looked at as this negative emotion, right? And it's really an emotion that helps us shift and transform. And, it can be things like overwhelm or stress or trauma or feeling unloved or unseen or unheard that can sit underneath that anger that comes out like that kind of volcano and that eruption, right? And it can look like yelling or screaming, or it can look like, a tantrum, or it can look like quietness and withdrawing within. And so, that was kind of the image that I saw of you when you mentioned that. And it's almost like when we hide our authentic selves and who we are under those everyday roles and responsibilities, and not put ourselves first and our pleasure or our needs or our desires or our dreams and our wishes first, it can come out as that overwhelm or whatever. And it's beautiful. It's to be honored, because it does allow us to then see a different version of ourselves, which is asking to be seen, heard, and loved. So I really love how you bring that into the mix and how that was part of that catalyst. And for viewers or listeners who are mums and wives or partners or whatever it might be, or the CEOs or the leaders in business or whatever, and you have those roles and those responsibilities in life, we often get told to do the self-love thing. What is that, and what does it look like, sound like, and feel like for you? Because it's really different for everybody. And so I love that you talk about the curiosity in amongst that, because and what I often talk to people about is, if you're not sure of what you need to do or where you need to go or what your joy looks like, sounds like, feels like, or your pleasure or your passion, then wonder, because it opens the door to curiosity, and it opens the door for your higher self, your authentic self, your intuitive self to be able to lead you and guide you and give you those little spiritual nudges, like going to an information session on yoni massage, so that you could be gifted that by the universe, right?
Yeah.
Here's your path. Here it is.
I know, right? And even like I've had channeled symbols and stuff done for me over the years, and it's like what they were and what the meaning was, I kind of sat with it, and then all of a sudden it lands, and it's like, all these pieces are coming together. And I love that you said when you feel curious or you're not sure, to start wondering. I often use the word start noticing. Like, you can't sometimes we hold ourselves back, I feel, because we haven't had this experience. Therefore, we don't have the knowledge on, are we safe, right? But we have to actually take that self-responsibility and go, well, I'm responsible for finding the knowledge to know if this is safe for me. So we move forward, and we just become the observer and the noticer of what is moving through us and around us, and we gain the knowledge and the insights that we didn't have, which is trying to keep us safe, and we move forward. I see this all the time with my clients who come, and they'll talk to me about how disconnected they feel from their body, from their pleasure. Maybe they're just somebody who just, the pleasure's not for them, or their body doesn't work in this way, so that's the story, right? And what I've come to recognize within myself is, if I choose to believe in one truth about something, I also know there is no singular one truth. And so if I want to give permission for this to exist, I actually have to give equal permission for an alternative to exist, right?
Exactly.
And what feels good for me will be my truth, but I still get to be curious and notice what else is possible. And I love that, because when clients come to me with a story that this is how it is, this is how I am, this is how it's always been, this is where my relationship is at, this is where I'm at with my motherhood journey, whatever it is. And my question for them is, okay, well, but what if something else is possible? Like, what if, right? And just follow that what if, and follow the curious noticings, the nudges, the niggles, and just gather more intel, And in my work, it looks like, what does it feel like when you don't just shower to shower? What if that shower was about you touching and honoring your body? Like, what new information can you get about yourself, about your pleasure, about what it feels like to be touched and held in different ways? Like, a shower doesn't just have to be about cleaning. Maybe it's about self-honoring. If that's the new intention, what do you notice?
Yeah.
And so wandering and noticing and curious. I love there's such a medicine in curiosity, right?
There is. And it's, I love how you talk about, the realities and the stories that, we create stories from our past experience and our lived experience, or our beliefs that we've been taught along the way and we've collected. Up until this moment, we've made that true. And in this very moment, we get to choose whether we wish to continue that same story, or to open the door to be curious about another story that we might be able to create and then, embody, if it's a journey to get there. Because, changing who we're being in the world can be something that's really challenging for people to look at from, I want to be here, yet it feels like this huge, big journey to get there. Well, what if it's just about taking those steps each day to go, okay, my intention today is to be curious about what brings me pleasure or what feels good to my body. Is it putting, and, I remember years ago when I was working on some of the same sorts of things, was really getting in contact with my body and really looking at physical touch and how I needed to receive that, and how other people enjoyed receiving that, because it's often something we don't talk about, whether it's, holding, and I had a previous partner who in public wouldn't do any physical touch or affection, and my love language is physical touch. So it's like, how's that work? So teaching myself to be able to receive that was a challenge after that relationship, that I had to be curious and wonder about how I could open to that. And it is a journey.
Absolutely, it is. And you mentioned love language being touch, and I have my own, I suppose, evolution of love language. And I noticed when I lived my life, if we go back to that moment where I was, just screaming in the room with my kids around me, like what had brought me to that point was I was living in the roles and responsibilities, and they were telling me who I was, how I should be. My shoulda, woulda, coulda was given to me by these roles and responsibilities. And I had, self-responsibility. I had actively chosen these roles and responsibilities because the unwritten book of expectations and conditions about how, I'd taken it on board. Didn't realize I could choose differently until it's all piled down and you're like, oh, I can't take the weight of this anymore, and something shifts. And I screamed, and you mentioned some people recoil, like it moves through us in different ways. And as I rebuilt myself and as I got to understand, who I was, how I brought myself back online, I actually still do the rules and responsibilities, but they aren't telling me who I am. I am me. And I'm falling in love with, what I love, love languages like touch, like quality time, and they shift and they change depending on different relationship dynamics and what's moving through me and all this stuff. But I am me, and I am fluid, and I change, and I pivot, and I grow, and I'm all of that showing up in the roles and responsibilities. So I'm still mothering, but mothering isn't squashing me. Mothering is now my opportunity, my catalyst to take what I'm growing, learning through, and gift it into a new foundation of who my children are, right? So I'm still doing the things. It's just flipping it, right? What dynamic is actually the leading dynamic? And it's me and who I am. And
And I love that, because what that brings in is really that whole concept in, energetics, talking about your masculine and your feminine energy, and which aspects of that are you embodying. And we have both for a reason. And it's really important to love both of them and acknowledge both of them and allow both of them to flow as they need to, because, even in partnerships, that's what we do. It's not a 50-50 in any relationship, right? There'll be days when one partner is a little bit lower and may need a little bit of boosting. And so you bring that extra to the space. And so that masculine doingness in the roles and responsibilities is, one of my old patterns as well, which I slip into every now and then. And I'm more conscious and more present to when I do that, is that, okay, logical brain, need to get stuff done, need to organize it. I'm in my masculine, boom, 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 boom. And my partner or my husband will look at me and go, Leanne. And I'm like, yeah, okay. Let's just take a breath and kind of bring and invite that feminine, softer, gentler beingness into the space, because she's actually just as strong and powerful and can get just as much done in that energy, if not more, because she's going with the flow and the nudges of where that energy is behind her.
Absolutely. And one of the biggest, I guess, aha moments that I drop into women's world is, especially if they're caught up in this masculine drive of do. We see it on repeat in things like, the corporate world and whatnot, is one of the ways in which it's like they can start to claim back that feminine essence is, yes, okay, you might be going off into the day that's very routine driven and very output orientated, and success is measured by your output, all this sort of stuff. But how you get up and start your day, no one dictates that except you. So if we get up and we can anoint ourselves in something that smells good, dress in something that makes us feel vibrant. Maybe we have a uniform, so it's more about, what underwear you're putting on or something like that, because then these anchors from your morning actually come back throughout your day. Every time you walk past a mirror, you're going to see what you're wearing, even if it's just your underwear. Every time you go to the toilet, you're going to see it, right? You're going to get wasps. People are going to notice what your perfume is, and they're going to comment, and it's going to anchor you back into these choices that you actively made at the beginning of your day to capture and anchor into this feminine essence. And so it then weaves its way into this masculine experience you might be having because of the shoulda, woulda, could, world of expectations. And it's those little those little anchors and those little reminders that just start to rewire our brain. You know, if we've given ourselves permission in the morning to do this, feel this, experience this, well, when we have our lunch break, how are we going to show up in that? You know, like it's all these little pieces that we just keep going with, and we I call it joy stacking. You know, you do what you got to do, but how can you do it in a way that brings you more on, you know, alive? It's the version of me that folds laundry, but I have a playlist that I play so that I can dance and move while I'm folding laundry. I'm still doing the things, but I'm stacking joy. I'm stacking sensuality, pleasure amongst everything that I do. And if we only think pleasure and sensuality is reserved to sexual acts with a partner or even self, then we are limiting ourselves so much. We are born in this energy, and it is us. It is life. It moves through us. And if once we remember that, we can show ourselves it through so many different experiences in our day. And a mantra, I just want to plant this mantra here for the audience to capture, because it served me so well. My mantra was, every day I deserve pleasure. So if I got to the end of the day and I couldn't find a moment in the day that I pinpointed and said, yes, that's my evidence, I deserve pleasure today and I received it, then before I went and laid my head down for sleep, I'd have a bath instead of a shower, or I'd play a playlist and I'd move my body. I'd do something so that I could go to bed, and every day I had confirmed and given myself evidence, gathered my wonderings and my noticings that yes, I deserve pleasure every single day, and I've done it.
Yeah, I love that, because, you know, I think people do forget that things are energy, and that we have access to that energy at any given moment just by making that choice and opening the doorway to that intentional choosing of pleasure. And I love that you say it's not just about sex and the physical acts. It's about, you know, what brings you pleasure. Do you feel, you know, putting certain types of clothes on, does it allow you to feel pleasure on your skin, right? I know that when I go shopping, I touch clothes and I'll go, oh yeah, or no, and immediately recoil. And so I know what feels pleasurable to touch for me. And, you know, coffee, I love my morning coffees. So it's always about, you know, embracing that moment of starting my day with the pleasure of that taste of coffee for me, and acknowledging that. And really, I love that you reflect back and really notice those moments and those instances, because what that does is builds that momentum towards, oh, okay, that's what it looks like, sounds like, and feels like for me. And when we come into relationship and connectedness, whether it's, you know, romantic or friendships or family or children or whatever, we can teach them and share or ask for what it is we need and desire. And I think that's part of what we need to empower ourselves to be able to do. If I don't know what pleasure looks like, sounds like, and feels like for me, how do I step into going, oh, that's not okay. What I need from you is this.
Yeah, exactly. Knowing ourselves. And to me, self-responsibility is the ultimate act of self-love. You have to know yourself, and you have to be willing to vulnerably claim space for yourself and say, this is what I need. This is what my needs are. This is how I'd like that to look. And when we bring that into our romantic relationships, right, it actually empowers the entire relationship dynamic, because the act of giving and receiving, that dynamic is so beautifully about a union, rather than trying to figure each other out and getting it wrong, and all this unspoken and these perceptions. If we're really clear about who we are, what we desire, what we need support in, all this stuff, when we bring that into our relationships, it changes the way we're actually able to relate. we're supposed to be in these dynamics as a collaboration, not as a
Yes.
one person trying to figure out the other person and then do it for them. Like, we need
Yeah.
to be in collaboration. And I
Yes.
mean, it's often the romantic relationships that bring people into my world saying something's wrong, help me. And my
Yeah.
most successful relationship dynamic that I've had was my homeschooling journey with my kids. The four
Yeah.
of us under one roof all day, every day, we had to know what each other needed. And we had to know that about ourselves. We had to be okay to ask for that. And we then had to hold space for each other. So if
Mm.
I didn't know that I needed space in the mornings for my cup of coffee and I needed to come online for the day, my own way, my own time, if they were just in my space all the time, we would have had a really rocky 3 years homeschooling. So,
Yeah.
and they had to know who they were as individuals as well, and be able to ask and stand really solidly in their wants and needs as well. So it isn't just these romantic relationships. That's where we notice it. That's where we create story that
Yeah.
something is wrong. I'm broken. The relationship's broken. I need
Yeah.
support. That's actually all our relationships. And sometimes the romantic or the sexual experiences are the microcosm for what actually we're experiencing on the macro as well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I love how you talk about your kids having to know, because, we often get taught as kids our love stories or what pleasure and intimacy looks like, sounds like, and feels like. And as adults, we can go on a journey to unpack that sometimes in order to step into who we want to become and who we're
Yeah.
becoming, and anchor that new version in. So it's so beautiful and amazing when kids can be taught that it's okay to know themselves and to know what feels good and what doesn't feel good, and to be able to give voice for, and I mentioned anger before, and often there's the unloved, unseen, unheard things underneath it. And recognizing that, even to be able to go, okay, there's something within me that's feeling unloved, unseen, unheard, misunderstood, or whatever it might be, unsupported, whatever that story might be. And then getting curious and wondering what it is that you need in order to step through it opens that door to be able to go, okay, I'm processing some stuff here. I need some space to move through this so I can give you some clarity about what's going on for me and what I need.
Yeah.
And that's the ultimate gift to yourself.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. And it gives us permission as well to be in evolution. We know ourselves, but we're not concreted in that knowing. Like, we grow and we evolve, and coming back to that wondering, that curiousness, like, if we can give space to know ourselves and be curious enough about ourselves, then we also will constantly give space for that curiousness, and so it evolves with us, and we up level ourselves, and we up level our relationships, and we move into careers and lifestyle. I'm getting goosebumps. Careers and lifestyles that actually truly align with us, and they're a reflection of who we are. And then you pivot it and you go back into the world of romantic relationships, and then all of a sudden you're feeling more connected than you've ever been before, and you can open up and you can blossom and you can have these ecstatic experiences, because there is no division between all of it. Like, it's how I landed in this work, because I wasn't finding that in my Reiki teaching. I wasn't finding that in my bodywork teaching. I came online with it through the yoni work, and then it's all one thing. We're not compartmentalized. We are whole.
Yeah.
So I'm getting all tingly about that. And like, what joy means, like you mentioned in the intro, that I am the joy huntress. That word joy for me is not rainbows and unicorns and skittles everywhere. It's journey of you.
Yeah.
It is everything. And it is being able to acknowledge that there are blessings and gifts and magic in all of it. If we stop calling things good, bad, broken, amazing, if we stop labeling things, and we just stay observant, we stay curious, and we notice and we wonder about the entire journey of you, we actually do land in joy.
Yeah.
Right? And that, to me, that's what it is, going on the hunt for all these gifts that have been in our journeys and unlocking that, because that's where our pleasure lies. And when we unlock our pleasure, we can access our desires. When we can access our desires, we can have these big, open-hearted, vulnerable conversations with people everywhere in our lives. And we create these beautiful co-collaborative experiences and exchanges, and whew, the whole world changes.
Yeah. And it is about giving ourselves permission to get curious about what that would look like, sound like, and feel like in your world. And just allow the universe and your intuition and your nudges to show you. And I think it's about being open to receiving that as well, which, you know, I love that you talked initially about everything is created, you know, through that sexual pleasure energy, because that's how we're birthed into the world. That's how we birth everything. Manifesting is all about sexual energy, really, because that's creation energy.
Yeah, I had a laugh yesterday. Another beautiful lady I follow, Keziah, she said, "Are you feeling stuck in your life right now? You don't need another self-help book. You just need to go masturbate." It's like, come on, my sexual energy.
Well, and it's quite interesting, because a lot of and I've done some work around sex magic and, you know, the witchy stuff from years ago as part of my journey. And, you know, that orgasm or pleasure is like that volcano of eruption. And what is it that you're focusing on when you're in that space of pleasure and joy, and how are you working with your body as energy?
Absolutely. And even that is a conversation of its own. Like, if we're just like, oh, if you can take that feeling that's centralized and give it permission to exist and through your whole body, like, whoo.
Yeah, maybe we'll have you back for another episode on that one.
Yes, please.
Awesome. Let's do that. I'm aware of time, so I'm going to say thank you so much for sharing a little bit about you and your journey. And I know there's much more to share. Can you let people know where they can connect with you if they'd like to know more about your work and what you do?
Yeah, absolutely. So I operate under the name I'm Her Women's Wellbeing. So I'm on Facebook and Instagram. Just look up the letters IMHER, and it should land you in my world. Obviously, as well, my name's Jo Goddard. I'm a very open person, even when it comes to my private profile. So just land in my world wherever feels good for you. Yeah, and we'll go from there. Yeah.
Awesome. And I'll pop the links to your website and your social media in the video and the audio for this episode as well. So thank you so much for sharing your beautiful, amazing energy and your knowledge and wisdom in this space. And I trust that it helps and supports you in your journey. Please feel free to comment and let us know if there was some useful insights on this episode that really helped you and empowered you to look at pleasure and intimacy in a different way. And for those of you who want to connect with me more, jump on my website, thebarefootmedium.com.au, and you can check out all my socials as well. Details are on the website. Until next time, thank you for joining me on Barefoot with Spirit podcast show.